Welcome to the Dear Chinese Canadian interview series. I am Calvin Man, and in every episode, we will be speaking to the most influential Asian Canadian leaders from various areas to share their successful stories. Why did they choose their path? How did they achieve their goals? What were their motivations? What hurdles did they face? I hope these stories will shed some light on realizing your dreams as they have for mine. Our guest today is Dr. Joseph Wong, who for over 40 years has devoted his life to humanitarian and social justice causes, serving and advocating for the weak, the voiceless, and the underprivileged. In 1986, the Toronto Star named Dr. Wong a practicing family doctor who has dedicated his life to helping the people in their community as the Man of the Year. And a few years later, in 1991 and 1992, Toronto Life magazine declared him as one of Toronto's most influential people. In 1993, Dr. Wong was also given the Order of Canada. Then, when Toronto celebrated its 180th birthday in March of 2014, Toronto Star released a list of names that consisted of Toronto's most influential 180th people in history. One of the names in the list was Dr. Wong. Despite the recognition of Dr. Wong in his work, this hasn't changed the person he wants to be in bettering his community around him. With a strong sense of justice and fairness, Dr. Wong won't hesitate to get involved if he believes that something can be done to make change. His efforts to change the community around him have only snowballed into a rippling effect that has changed many lives for the better. Of all the leaders in our community I've come across on the topic of social activism, Dr. Wong struck me as the most generous, authentic, and actionable. I was so inspired by his principles, I decided to invite him here for the interview. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Wong. Thank you for coming. So let's begin with your arrival to Canada in 1968 from Hong Kong. Your initial objective was to study medicine at McGill, but instead you decided to study electrical engineering because you were an international student. So was this your first encounter of personal injustice in Canada?
I don't feel that this is personal injustice. I think every country has its own system. Its system is to educate the citizens of the country instead of giving places away to international students.
Right.
So I think it is quite acceptable. On the other hand, of course, I was quite disappointed knowing that expecting that I would be able to get into medicine at McGill or UT or other Canadian universities. So the fact that the universities did not accept international students was a little shock to me.
Right.
I don't think it's injustice, but I just think that it is a country system and I have to respect it.
Of course.
So when I know that if I could become a landed immigrant or permanent resident, I could get into the universities for medicine. So that is why I changed to electrical engineering. I thought that if I graduated from electrical engineering, I would be able to pursue, say, biomedical engineering as my graduate studies. But my desire to continue with medicine was not extinguished. Mm-hmm. So I became, during my university years at McGill, I became a permanent resident. I became a landed immigrant so that I could be qualified for medicine. But instead of getting into Canadian universities, I got pretty good scholarship from Albert Einstein in New York City, and that is why I went there.
Right. So why did you decide to become a doctor instead of pursuing something along the lines of engineering? Was it some experience in Hong Kong that led you to change your mind or to begin thinking about becoming a doctor at such an early age?
Quite naturally, I think the upbringing in Hong Kong has a lot to do with my desire to become a doctor or on my path to do the things that I have been able to do. I was born in Hong Kong in a period we call heaven for the rich and hell for the poor.
Right.
So I was born into a very poor neighborhood. In my neighborhood, there are not too many young people like me who were even able to finish high school, let alone universities. So getting into university was very, very difficult. Little did I know that with the kind of upbringing that I had, with my family fortune, there was almost no chance that I could get into medicine. But seeing a lot of people in my neighborhood who are lacking education, who are lacking medical care, the thought that I would like to do to become a teacher or a doctor naturally
Those are all in your mind
develop at that
the time,
time. Yes,
yeah.
when I was very young. 可以講話不知天高地厚. I don't know how difficult it is to get into, say, for example, medicine in Hong Kong U. It is almost impossible
yeah.
for poor
It still
kids
is.
in my neighborhood. But it still is, right?
Right.
But even
At the time.
even more so at that time. Even more so for people from the poor neighborhood. I mean, they would be lucky if they could finish high school.
Wow, I definitely didn't know that this was the case in Hong Kong at the time, but it's very motivating to hear your story and how you were able to come to Canada to pursue your education. So ever since you graduated from university and medical school in 1981, you have given your time to organizations that promote the well-being of people who are underprivileged. So in your early years of your career, how important was it that the Chinese-speaking people, so those who weren't able to get access to the Western doctors in Chinatown and at Mount Sinai Hospital, to receive the same help that the others did? So what was this experience like in your mind?
I graduated in 1976 at Albert Einstein.
Right.
So I came back because I loved the medical system in Canada, the universal medical care. So I really think that medical care is a universal right rather than a privilege. People rich or poor should be entitled to adequate quality medical care, and that's why I like Canada.
Yeah.
When I came back, in the neighborhood that I could put myself in, and also doing my internship training at the downtown hospitals, I encountered a lot of Chinese Canadians who are unable to get medical care because of language barrier and cultural barrier. So particularly at Toronto Western, I was sent to see patients in nursing homes. So there I experienced a lot of horror stories. So the Chinese elderly told me how they were treated, maybe not because of discrimination. It did probably a lot more to do with language barrier, unable to express your physical needs, unable to get emotional support and things like that. So I thought of how our pioneers who came to this country toiled through their younger years, and at the old age when they needed help the most, they should be able to get the appropriate help that they deserve. So that is when I started to think of there should be a home that could properly take care of these elderly Chinese Canadians.
Right.
So the idea or the dream of organizing a long-term care home for these elderly people actually started in 1978.
Wow.
2 years after I came back to Canada. But again, I was so young, I don't know 天高地厚. Again, this is something that I really don't know how difficult it is.
Right.
And indeed, it was such a high barrier, a mountain of a barrier that people have to scale and climb over before they could reach that dream. But that dream was with me. I was unable to do it in the beginning, but by 1987, I thought of my commitment to the elderly that I was taking care of at that time. I started the dream of building Yihong in 1987. So I asked many friends and volunteers coming to my house at the basement. We discussed the plans to build a home appropriate to serve Chinese Canadians in their language and also in their culture.
Right, so what were some challenges? Like, I'm very curious to know, like, the challenges that you came across when you were founding Yihong, because I'm sure as a Asian Canadian, in a Western society, I don't know if people were willing to support such initiatives. So what were some challenges that you might have faced? Maybe fundraising, gathering people, volunteers to help you out.
There are challenges in different fronts.
Right.
Fundraising, of course, is a big challenge because building a nursing home, building a long-term care home is not cheap. And at that time, we are all volunteers. We were new graduates. Although we might have good job, but still we were not rich enough to support such an undertaking.
Right.
Secondly, in order to get a license, you really need to have connections with the government and need to show your experience. We did not have any. No connections, no experience, no money. So we started from literally zero, okay, with the bare dream that we wanted to do it,
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of young people who said, these need to be done. We want it to be done. So we talked to different people. We talked to university professors. We went to see different nursing homes. We knocked on the government's doors. We need such a home.
Right.
Okay, we almost fought at Queen's Park to let them know that we are angry. We are up to the neck, and we really need to find a way to build an appropriate home to take care of Chinese Canadian seniors. And eventually, we got their doors open, we got the years, and they finally agreed that this is a good idea, and that is why we started to build Yi Hong. And it is after 7 years of struggling and protesting and doing research studies, talking to different people, and of course fundraising like crazy to get it started.
Well, it's definitely an initiative that is very prominent today. You have how many locations currently? I think you have 4 locations in Ontario.
We have 4 senior campuses in GTA, 2 in Toronto, 1 in Markham, and another one in Mississauga. And because of the long waiting list and because of the service gaps,
right.
People often, our elderly Chinese Canadians often have to wait maybe 6 to even 10 years to get into Yi Hong, and that is why we have ample reasons to ask the government to give us more license to build more homes. So we're given 3 new licenses to build another 800 beds in GTA. So this is an exciting news, but it is also a huge barrier that we have to fundraise to get it going. But I mean, fundraising, the total construction cost is $320 million, and we need to raise $80 million is no question the biggest fundraising target in Chinese Canadian history.
Well, I'm glad to hear that the government has been more supportive than it has in the past, and I think they've realized the issue of providing senior Asian Canadian senior
because
housing.
Yi Hong has demonstrated amply
exactly
that if a community wants to take care of the seniors,
they have to take
there's
action.
no better way to get a community to work together to support their seniors. And it has been demonstrated that we have very good services, exemplary services, and through different years with Accreditation Canada inspecting the homes, they put Yi Hong on top of everybody else. And I think that is the reason why the government continue to support us. And they even ask anybody who want to come to Ontario to see how good our system is. They send them to Yi Hong, whether they are from Europe, from Asia, or from anywhere, or Australia, or United States.
Wow, that's definitely a very, very high achievement that you've earned in your lifetime. But I want to quickly touch upon the CTV W5 event that happened in 1979.
Here is a scenario that would make a great many people in this country angry and resentful. Suppose your son or daughter wanted to be an engineer, or a doctor, or a pharmacist. Suppose he had high marks in high school, and that you could pay the tuition. But he still couldn't get into university in his chosen course because a foreign student was taking his place. Well, that is exactly what is happening in this country, but hardly anyone wants to talk about it.
So it was a 11-minute television program which mobilized the Chinese community into an unprecedented social movement in the Chinese Canadian history. So can you quickly walk us through what happened at the CTV W5 event?
That is on September 30th.
September 30th, yes.
1979. So CTV W5 program is a very well-known and very credible documentary program in which the producer and the host accused Chinese Canadians of stealing or robbing places that rightfully belong to Canadians. So with tone and effect, they demonstrated on the screen that to be Canadian in Canada, you need to be white. If you are non-white, particularly yellow or Chinese people in Canada, you are foreigners. So that is such a horrible racist broadcasting that we could not tolerate. So after we rally and we inform the community, people get together and mobilize not only Toronto, we fly across Canada to Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Regina, and Winnipeg, all the way come to Southern Ontario, to Ottawa and Montreal, and also Eastern Canada. So we went to a lot of cities and organized the respective Chinese communities into anti-W5 committees. So very soon we organized 16 cities across Canada.
Wow.
And on January 23, 1980, we organized a pan-national protest. Simultaneously, there were protest movements in Vancouver, in Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, and Montreal. So there was something that shocked CTV, because CTV thought that Chinese Canadians have only 5 minutes of passion, 5分鐘熱度. So I think that they might have asked some lawyers in the community how to deal with us.
Right.
And they said, oh, don't worry, they only have passion for 5 minutes.
But you've shown that no.
No.
If it's wrong, we definitely.
That's right. We don't want to lie down and play that.
Right.
We are going to make justice for the situation. We really need CTV to make apology and to make sure that this type of racist documentary would not reappear on the screen.
And where did this motivation come from? You know, as a doctor who is already so busy in his own field of work, what led you to?
I remember back in Hong Kong in the early 1960s when I was only in the early teens. There was a movement in Hong Kong that deeply galvanized me and touched me. So there were a bunch of young people who want to convey a very strong message to the government that they should not let a ferry company to raise fare by 50%.
Right. Wow.
This is absolutely not acceptable. So this bunch of young people protested. Initially maybe 10, 15 people, and then they gather a few hundred people. But in the colony, it was in the early 1960s, Hong Kong police under British rule would not allow any protests to take place. So they were crushed, they were treated horribly, and the young people met horrible fate after the demonstration. And that really gave me a lot of, that really angered me a lot, and I would not stand to accept injustice. So that kind of 不平則命, if it is not justice, you have to call it out, you have to act, and you have to shout.
Right.
I think that generated my resolve to speak against injustice later on in my youth years.
Wow. So this report, it sparked outrage across Canada as it is racist, divisive, and deplorable. It caused the normally passive, as you said, the passive and docile community to stand up and fight against injustice made against them, making this a milestone fight for the minorities, fighting against discrimination. So were there any challenges that you might have come across when fighting for the CTV-W5 scandal?
Tons of challenges.
Because I'm not sure, I think it's not easy, right?
Yeah, because CTV was a very powerful broadcasting stations. It has connection with governments,
Exactly.
it has connection with decision makers and powerful people in the right place, in the powerful places. So we know that in the very beginning, we are fighting a formidable opponent. So we are not naive, okay? So we gather a lot of volunteers. Speaking of volunteers, I have to say that in 1978 and 1979, when we organized a movement to help the boat people from Cambodia, from Indochina, from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, we already gathered a very big group of volunteers who are conscientious, who are capable, and who like to fight against injustice. So this group of people eventually become the backbone of all the movements that I organize, like Yihong, Alpha, fighting CTV, getting involved with United Way, and a number of others, fundraising for different natural disasters in the world. So we have a very good group of volunteers. I have to give a lot of credit to these people who really work, and they are our background heroes. They do not come to the front.
Heroes.
Unsung hero, definitely. So I have a lot of respect for my friends and for those volunteers who have been working alongside with me for so long.
Wow. So this event, the CTV event, led to the direct founding of the Canadian Chinese National Council that monitored racial discrimination against the Chinese community. So it's also a platform for young Chinese Canadians to learn about their cultural history. I know you founded a lot of organizations in the past, but what were some challenges that you faced when founding these organizations?
Well, during the late 1970s, we were only a bunch of very naive, courageous volunteers, and who know very little because a lot of us come from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And we don't know the system here, we don't have any connections, we are not wealthy by any means.
Right.
So starting from such a position, you know that we were inexperienced. We don't have any powerful friends that we could lean on. Mm-hmm. So it was tough, it was difficult, there's no question about it. So if I were going back to that time,
right.
definitely I would not have done what I did. But I think that we gather experience as we grow, as we put things together. So the first things that we do is to visit our chapters across the country, listen to different chapters, their local problem, their national aspirations, and what we could do to promote Chinese Canadian community, how to protect our privileges, and how to also discharge our responsibilities. Privileges always come with responsibilities, right. And we know that, okay? So in order to stand tall in Canada, how we can, as a group, as a community, how we could make sure that we contribute to the well-being of the country in order to be recognized. So that was what we went through.
Wow. It's definitely a lot to take in, you know, like at a time when Asian Canadians did not have a place in Canada, you've definitely made a statement for yourself that we will not stand down against racial injustice, and we have to stand up for ourselves. So you're one of the leaders, one of the models that many of us look up to even to this day.
Thank you.
So just as the first president of CCNC, how did you spearhead initiatives and promoted integration and encouraged race relations and national unity in Canada?
We use extensively media because at that time Chinese media was quite well developed already.
Wow.
At that time. So a lot of Chinese media tuned to radios, Chinese newspapers, and Chinese TV. So we make extensive use of the media to do our work. So the first thing is education. Educating our community what are reasonable, and if there are injustice, we just need to call it out, right. and deal with it that way. So I believe that we do have a certain degree of success because of the NTW5. The whole community was jubilant. The whole community was elated, and it showed that if we unite together, we could really do things that was kind of impossible to do. So in the beginning, that's right, indeed. So in the beginning, we thought that it would be impossible to get CTV to apologize. But eventually, after 6 months, they apologized very thoroughly.
Right.
In the statement, in the 2-page apology, they said that this segment is racist in tone and effect. So there was no excuses to hide anything. This is wrong. We accepted that this is absolutely not right.
Right.
So I was extremely pleased with the statement that they put out. Now they did not only send a letter to us to make the apology. They put out a statement, an apology of 2 pages.
Video.
2 pages
Wow.
Statement to all media organizations across the country, and then that is how thorough it is. So it is just not a private letter, to satisfy us, but they admitted
to keep us quiet.
Right, indeed. They admitted their guilt, they admitted their mistakes, they promised to do better. So that is a very thorough apology from CTV.
Right.
I have to give them credit as well.
Yeah, definitely. So as the founder of a DEIJ steering committee at the Toronto Friends School, I also have some limited personal experience in starting something from scratch. While working with head of HR, principals, staff, alumni, consultants, and students, I've recognized and solved many short-term issues. And I'm still struggling with how to create a sustained path forward to address problems that defy simple or simplified solutions. So I know you've founded multiple organizations, such as the National Harmony Movement in 1994, a nonprofit organization that combats interracial intolerance, and which confronts the us versus them attitude, which was prevalent in Canadian society at the time. So how important is it for you that social issues are addressed and not overlooked?
In order to gain your rightful place in the society,
Right.
I think that everybody has to fight injustice. I don't think that just sitting on the sideline
Yeah.
would be an answer, because in the North American society, we allow people who experience injustice to voice out,
Right.
to let people know. That is why there are so many peaceful protests in different parts of the country for different causes.
In 1997, you founded an organization called Alpha Education, so that's the Association for Learning and Preserving the History of World War II in Asia. And the goal of this organization was to preserve and inform people about Asia's involvement in the history in World War II, and to seek justice for the victims and foster humanities education. So what kind of inspired you to form an organization like that?
I think it started from the Holocaust education.
Right.
In the Second World War, in Europe, Jewish people were being persecuted.
Right.
And that has touched me tremendously, particularly when I studied at Albert Einstein College of Medicine. During the Holocaust Education Month, I went to the synagogues, I listened to the survivors, I listened to their stories, and it really touched me tremendously. And I admire the Jewish community pouring resources to make sure the world would not forget what had happened to them during World War II in Europe. So when I learned about the World War II in Asia, when China suffered such a horrible fate at the hands of the Japanese Imperial Army, I was wondering why we Chinese forgot those things quite readily. And also, the world over, nobody remembered World War II in Asia.
Right.
The forum was in Europe. Of course, it is because of the Western dominance of the whole world at that time. But I still wanted that to do some justice to those people who perished in World War II in Asia. The success of the Jewish Holocaust education inspired me to found Alpha.
Right.
So Alpha, the whole name is Association for Learning and Preserving the History of World War II in Asia.
Yeah.
So it is called Alpha.
Right.
So I founded that in 1997, and in the same year, Ira Cheng wrote a book. Now I have to say that after I founded Alpha, I was quite discouraged because of the cool response from the community. Oh, it is so long ago, let us forget about it, look forward or whatever. It is not that I don't want to look forward, but in order to look forward, in order to move forward, we need to have the history as a background, how to teach us how to move forward and look forward. So I founded Alpha not because I want to revenge, far from it. I want the world to be a better place. I want to look at the war from a peace and humanitarian perspective, how to make sure that our young people have creative, have a very sound mind, how to judge right from wrong, and how to promote peace in the world, which is very chaotic at the moment. I think that how Alpha, the mission of Alpha is to go through using World War II in Asia as a background to teach our young people how to promote peace and humanity.
Yeah, so I know at the time you did a study and you realized that only 1 to 2% of Canadians knew about the attack of the imperialistic, the Japanese army in China. So with less than 100 survivors, how important is it for the current generation to learn about these events, and what have you done in order to let these events not be forgotten?
I said just now that that I was very disappointed because of cool response from the community.
Yeah.
But something at the end of 1997, during the 60th anniversary of the rape of Nanking or the Nanking Massacre, there was an American woman, a young American woman in her 20s, who wrote a book that shocked the world. The book is Rape of Nanking.
Wow.
Okay, so this book, after it was written, It became #1 bestseller in the New York Times bestseller list for many weeks in a row. It has broken all records for non-fiction books on the New York Times record. So I learned about it from Newsweek. I call her, I went all over my North American friends.
Yeah.
Do you know Iris Chang? Do you know Iris Chang? And finally, I was able to locate her. And I gave her a call, cold turkey, and I told her that I could promote the book in Canada. As a matter of fact, we were the first one in the world to promote Iris Chang's book.
Wow.
And afterwards, her book became one of the most popular books ever. It was translated in many different languages. It was very popular in North America, in Europe, and around the world. So that really gave me the strength and the power to continue with the mission. I have to give a lot of credit to Iris, who really galvanized the whole world, who alerted the world of such atrocities that were committed in World War II in Asia.
So you were also a very strong advocate and promoter of the Bill Act 79. So would you mind explaining what exactly it is?
Bill 79 is to ask Ontario to declare December 13 every year as Nanjing Massacre Memorial Day. So at that time, there was quite a bit of opposition from the Japanese right wing. And since Ontario has a lot of trade with Japan, the legislature was hesitant to go ahead with it.
Even the Ontario Premier at the time was very hesitant to...
Exactly, very hesitant. So we organized a petition campaign. We have over 100,000 signatures within 2 or 3 months. So a lot of Chinese organizations were involved. They were passionate. A lot of people were involved, and we signed up over 100,000 people within a few months and delivered to the legislature in Ontario. And also we visited all leaders, all 3 leaders of the parties, New Democrats, Conservative, as well as Liberal. So eventually, we convinced them that this bill has to go ahead, and that is why it was declared at that time the Nanjing Massacre Memorial Day on December the 13th. So this is probably outside of China, the only jurisdictions in the world that remember the rape of Nanking during the anniversary.
Right. Wow, it's very impressive because in Asian Canadian within Canada, there hasn't been an event like this to promote to allow for the next generation to understand what happened in Nanjing and in China. So it's very heartwarming that something is finally being done. And you worked so hard for so many years to promote the understanding of the Nanjing massacre among Westerners, and especially the citizens of Ontario in Canada. Were there moments where you felt hopeless, and what kept you on your feet? What kept you going?
More than moments. There were many periods that I thought that we were not going anywhere. But with perseverance, with continuing hard work, I think that we have finally found a formula to succeed. I think it really depends on our years of community work. I think community work adds to our credibility. So we have done so many community work, both inside and outside of the Chinese community, and we built a very good credibility with different levels of government. So when we campaign or when we lobby the Ministry of Education to accept World War II in Asia in the history curriculum in high schools in Ontario, they agree that this is something to be taught because we pride ourselves as a diverse, multicultural country. Yet, in the history courses, it is only Eurocentric. It doesn't make sense. So I think the Ministry of Education, after our lobbying, agreed to accept World War II in Asia as part of the curriculum. And afterwards, we talked to different school boards, and also they agreed to work together with Alpha Education to promote the history teaching in their schools. And now we are building a museum, and this museum would be the bedrock that would promote this type of education, because we want the students to come to the museum, go through what we have prepared for them, and then at the end of the tour, we have seminars, we have conferences, we have workshops, we have discussions, and we have reflections. I think that is the way to raise the awareness of Westerners, of students, Chinese and non-Chinese, to understand that part of the World War a little bit better. And we do it in a way that is not seeking revenge. We do it in a way that is not a narrow nationalistic approach, because it definitely would be rejected by a Ministry of Education, by boards of education, and also by our teachers and schools, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
And that is why having an appropriate perspective to teach this war, to make sure young people understand the history and what to do and how to prevent war from happening again. So that is how we approach it, and that was agreed upon by different school boards.
Right.
So we have agreements with school boards. We have signed MOUs with different school boards. They would send students to the museum, and we would take care of the teaching and the reflection of the students.
Right, so in addition to doing everything in Canada, I know that you've also led expeditions to Nanjing itself to learn about the stories of survivors of the war. Would you mind speaking to this?
Yes, we have taken a few hundred teachers and educators to Asia, to China, Korea, and Japan, and Hong Kong, to understand the impact of World War II in Asia, and also to study history, where history happened. And that was very successful, and we have taken a few hundred educators there. And I think that finally, we want to establish a museum so that we could do better educational work in Canada.
Right. So you're speaking about the museum, the Wang Avery Asia Pacific Peace Museum. Would you mind speaking to the goal and the message of establishing a physical place rather than an online website or an article? What was the main goal and message of establishing this?
Online and without personal interaction is always second rate from my perspective. I think people learn better with personal encounter of the artifacts, of the primary source materials, of research that we have done, okay, because we know that it is very important. We cannot make mistakes. So our research is very thorough. And after we have done a research, it is shared by a lot of authorities, a lot of scholars in different fields who go over our work and agree that this is a fair portrayal of history.
Right.
So we want the students to learn from a fair treatment of the history, and we want to raise their awareness. We want them to think what they could do as citizens of this country to prevent war from happening.
Right, wow. In North America, there's a corresponding Holocaust Education Week every year with speeches, academic conferences, film screenings, and more throughout the city to make this history known. What are some things that the Chinese growing up under the Eurocentric perspective can do to learn and promote historical endeavors suffered by our people?
So personal interaction, of course, is good. But
Right.
on the other hand, how could the Toronto Museum spread the message across the nation? We could do it in GTA, at the most, through Ontario, but
Right.
How about other parts? I think a museum is good because it is small enough. It could be duplicated everywhere, almost, okay? So we have done the research. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. It could be reproduced, and it could be put online. And that is the good thing about it. So I hope to see more of the Wang Avery Asia Pacific Peace Museum throughout the
Canada.
world. Yes,
Yeah, across
not only in Canada, but
Europe.
hopefully in Asia and in Europe as well.
Yeah, wow. After learning so much about you, I wonder who was your biggest influence in your path to becoming a leader?
I think it is a accumulation of experience.
Right.
And the one that I have the most respect for is the National Father of China, Dr. Sun Yat-sen. I learned about him, I learned history, I read about him, and I really respect his mission and his vision for China and for the world, and his perseverance, his hard work, trial and trial after failure.
Right.
I think that really inspired me, and I would say if I have any mentors that I respect a lot, he is my #1 mentor and inspiration.
Wow. So you speak of trial and error. So were there any moments in time where you tried to do something but it didn't happen as successfully as it as you wanted it to be?
Definitely, there are many failures on the way, but I regard it as a necessary process, a necessary experience in order to reach success. You don't reach success overnight.
Right.
I think that you have to expect failures, challenges, and barriers. So those would increase your knowledge, increase your experience, and also make you a humble person as well.
Yeah. So after looking at all of your accomplishments, are there any that you're the most proud of?
There are many things that I'm proud of. The work that we do as a whole, I don't want to say that I did it alone. It is a movement.
Right.
It is thousands of people working together. I really owe all the volunteers so much because I have a lot of personal growth with all this work. I mean, I think I benefit more than what I have given.
Wow.
I think the personal growth, the spiritual satisfaction, when I see that people get help, people people who are marginalized are able to get back on their feet. This is the most that anyone could hope for. It is not money.
As Asians, we are taught to keep our heads down, lay low, and try not to rock the boat too much. Do you have a message for those who are fighting for something that they truly believe in, but haven't seen much progress?
I think humility is still a very good virtue. Having humility does not mean that you have to keep your head down.
Right.
Having humility means that you know that you don't know a lot. I mean, you know more than you don't.
Right.
After you know more, you know that you have a lot that you don't know. So I believe that knowing oneself and knowing ourselves, it really teaches us to be humble. Mm-hmm. And the humility is to be humble. But I don't think that means that we have to keep our heads down. We have to understand our role. We have to understand our identity in this country, to raise our heads, to stand tall in this country together with other Canadians.
Right.
So fighting through a lot of battles in Canada in the last 40 somewhat years, I learned many ways. I really think that how to treat our volunteers, how to give credit to all the people who work together to make a successful movement, and that is a very good lesson for everyone. So I think having young people coming up to continue the torch, to continue to the movement, the mission, it is utmost important. So in all our organizations, Alpha, Yihong, and others, the most important job we have is to inspire our young people, mentor them so that they would think that community work is worthwhile to do, not that you are wasting your time, wasting your life. As a matter of fact, doing community work is really to enrich yourself, right, to give you experience, to teach you how to be humble, and also to let you know that there are a lot more than just financial rewards.
Yes. Are there any life lessons that you wish to bestow upon the audience watching today?
The very important lesson that I learned is that don't underestimate yourself. I learned from Iris Chang. She said, don't underestimate the power of one. That one, it could be you, who could change the world, who could change the environment, who could change your community. Don't say that I'm just one person. What could I do to change things? I think that this is probably a lot of people's mentality. But I learned from Iris Chang that the power of one is very important. It's very powerful. But anything, any mission, any vision would not be able to materialize if you don't work hard. So working hard is always a must. Talents, skills, knowledge, they're important, but without hard work, you would never succeed. And I found it out all through these years. And my volunteers and I have been working very hard, effort, perseverance. We are not afraid to fail. As a matter of fact, you could not avoid failure before you could reach success.
So for those young people who still may be hesitant to volunteer or to speak out about issues they've seen in their community, what advice or suggestions would you like to give them?
there are a lot of organizations in our community who want to mentor young people. They could call them, I think, Yihong, Alpha Education, CCNC, the Chinese Canadian National Council for Social Justice. They have been doing excellent and wonderful work. The anti-racism work that CCNC for Social Justice and Alpha Education is doing is phenomenal. These two organizations in different sectors of a community, in different segments of community, they exert very, very big influence on education, on dealing with the government, on dealing with the discrimination and racism that happen very frequently in this country. Although we have the best human rights legislations in the world in Canada, but on the other hand, we have seen how Asian, particularly Chinese, were treated during the pandemic years. So it really alert us and warn us that we should not rest on our laurels. We have to keep keep up with our toes. We have to keep everybody on their toes so that we could achieve a more equitable society.
Right, wow. So you've shown us the importance of solidarity and dispelled the perception that the Chinese sit idle during injustice. Your dedication, determination, and willingness to fight for justice and fairness have only motivated the community to do the right thing until the desired result is achieved. And you've inspired hundreds of thousands of Chinese Canadians, and I'm very, very thankful that you've taken the time here today to take on this interview one-on-one. Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you for your time as well.
Thank you,
You're a
Dr.
wonderful young person.
Thank you, Dr.
I
Wang.
hope that you could come to Yihong or Alpha Education for internship and to continue to grow.
I would love to.
You have a lot of potential.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.